Charlotte Nicholls, your candidate, Rebecca Long-Bailey, gave Jeremy Corbyn 10 out of 10 for being Labour leader. He did lead your party to the worst result since 1935. What would she have given him if he'd won?
Well, I think she was giving him it as a person. I think the really important thing in this contest is that we conduct it in a really collegiate way, that it's not about personal attacks on each other or the previous leadership. It's about owning up to the reasons why Labour suffered the defeat they did, which, you know, were not things that was just this election. It's been a long time coming, unfortunately.
Does it mean, I mean, are you coming to terms with what happened last month? Are you confronting what the party needs to face up to after last month if you give the man that led you to this terrible defeat 10 out of 10?
Well, there were aspects of our policy manifesto, for example, that were very popular.
Well, maybe that would make it 5 out of 10.
Well, you know, obviously, I think
4 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
I think it was about being, you know, respectful to the fact that, you know, he did a lot of good for the party in terms of the policy direction, the things that we were talking about in the previous elections. You know, it was
so you had the right policies, but you just got thumped.
We had the right policies. The issue was that people didn't trust us to deliver them.
How do you know that, though? So it's kind of taken hold, this sense that the policies were popular. It's taken hold among quite a lot of Labour people. And, you know, maybe that was the case. But how do you know that when the defeat was so serious? How can people say with confidence, well, the policies were popular when the country rejected them so overwhelmingly?
Well, in my constituency, it was from going out door knocking. Approximately 60% of people in the constituency over a 4-week campaign.
You won yours.
I did, but with a much reduced majority. And it was something that, you know, there were a lot of people that had issues about various things that they were perfectly happy to talk to us about, and those issues were not our policies.
What would you give Mr. Corbyn, or what would Clive Lewis do? Would you give him 10 out of 10?
I don't know what Clive Lewis would give him, but what he has...
Well, then I can tell you.
I was waiting for you to do
Service
that.
broadcasting at its finest, because Mr. Lewis was on the Victoria Derbyshire show on the BBC this morning. This is what he said.
Rebecca Long-Bailey said yesterday she'd give Jeremy Corbyn 10 out of 10 for his leadership. What would you give him?
Well, it's not for me to give a mark out of 10 because the public have already given their
Look, you've
their
worked with him
response to
closely for a number of years. I'm asking you to.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be 10 out of 10.
What would it be?
I would say maybe a 6 out of 10 because.
Immediately, a major schism in the Labour Party. 6 out of 10.
Well, look, at this time, what we've got to recognise is that Jeremy Corbyn's leadership achieved so much in our movements, and I think it's...
What did it achieve?
Well, what it has done, it's brought, you know, the biggest democratic organisation across Europe, 500,000 members.
All that means is your members aren't representative of the country.
People have come together and very much seen that there is a real future in addressing the real issues which are facing society, and therefore looking at issues like housing, health, good quality.
But you fought the election on all these issues, and the people rejected you.
Not everybody rejected us. Really,
no, but you
knock aside half the country.
You lost 50-odd seats.
We did, and that's a very serious place to...
I would file that under R for rejection.
Personally, I think what it says is that we have to rebuild and have to reconnect with our voters. They're the people that matter, and it isn't about policy. It's about relationships and people's lives.
This is the major difference between now and the aftermath of the 1983 election, when Michael Foot lost by a landslide to Margaret Thatcher. Because as the Labour Party, after that, a bigger defeat than the one it suffered in December, as it began to try to put itself together again, it did say it was about policy. It did say we cannot fight another election on what one Labour MP said was the longest suicide note in history.
What's happened in politics, it's become very transactional. So about the state saying, we'll do something to you. Politics should be about hearing the voices from the communities and responding to that, more relational. And therefore, I think we have got to go on that journey to take politics back to giving people in the communities real power, real voice, real opportunity, and to see where they fit into the equation. And therefore, no matter what you throw at people through a manifesto from any party, it isn't actually saying we want to hear from you and include you and to ensure that politics evolves around you. And that's where I think we have to move.
But if you really believe that,
I do.
You would say, let's forget the manifesto that we fought the last election on. We're going to build a new manifesto with policies as yet unspecified because we're going to listen to people from the bottom up.
And that's absolutely what we should be doing in politics.
But everything I hear from from Rebecca Long-Bailey to Clive Lewis is that, by and large, the manifesto you lost on is the one you want to keep.
Well, certainly at the hustings last night, we heard a different story, and I very much heard from Clive about putting power back in the hands of people. That was the centre of his message, and that's what people called for. We've got to remember right through from 2016, moving forward, that they felt they didn't have control over their lives after experiencing the austerity which the government inflicted on them. And therefore, what we're saying is if we devolve power to local government, to proper devolution deals, we can then see people taking control over the infrastructure, the jobs, what is needed in their community.
Would you like to remind our viewers what happened when you did that in Scotland?
Well, what we have said in Scotland is we were still under a centrist Westminster regime.
No, the power is devolved in Scotland massively. And what it did was to destroy the Labour Party.
Well, don't forget the Labour took power in Scotland as well. And I think what...
and then you're down to one MP. I mean, when I was your age, Labour had 45 MPs.
Well, I'm sure we will again in Scotland.
So listening to the people isn't necessarily a solution for Labour, is it?
Well, it depends.
If Scotland is anything to go by.
Well, it depends what we think power and politics is about. And if it isn't about the people, we shouldn't be here.
Rebecca Long-Bailey, her campaign, the start of it seems to have been a little bit stuttering. For a while, we didn't really know if she was going to run. Then she came up with, what was it, progressive patriotism, which I think survived one article. Then she launched it properly in the Tribune this week. Now we hear that the hustings didn't go that well for her. Is her heart really in this?
I disagree that the hustings didn't go well. I think there are a lot of questions that came up that, particularly around the issue of anti-Semitism, that I actually thought she was the most credible candidate on. Now, in terms of the start of her campaign, I think she's been very clear that she wasn't someone with a kind of oven-ready leadership campaign ready to go after the election, because she was focused on winning the election and hopefully putting Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. Well, that's something that a lot of MPs had during the election. I mean, I would like to think that my video was pretty nice as well, and, you know, I'm not running for Labour leader.
All right.
Let's, you know, anointed really by people around Jeremy Corbyn months and months ago. You know, you can't really say she was still really mulling over whether or not to do it. She was only reflecting on what she was going to do. Is that credible?
I think I mean, there were other people that names were floating around, you know, not least Ian Lavery. I think that...
Well, he's not running now. He's backing your candidate. He's backing Rebecca Long-Bailey. We're going to have to leave it there, Charlotte Nicholls. Thanks for joining us.